This episode may contain content of a graphic nature, including descriptions of physical and sexual violence against adults, children, and animals. Listener discretion is advised. Hi everyone, I'm Talia.
And I'm Tanya.
And together we are TNT Crimes and Consequences, a true crime podcast. Hi everyone. Hi Tanya.
Hi Talia.
How is your day so far? Don't lie.
It's awesome.
You lied.
I did.
You lied.
I'm excited to hear this story today.
This episode is a true crime story that I heard years ago. I read an article on it, and I was really disturbed by it.
Oh, disturbed.
It's high on the gruesome scale. This is a crime I don't think a lot of people know about. It didn't get a lot of publicity, and there's really not a lot of information out there on the internet about this. I got the information today from the court case. Are you ready?
Absolutely.
Let's just do it.
Let's just do it.
The story begins with a 17-year-old girl from Terra Haute, Indiana, named Alicia. Terra Haute is southern Indiana.
Okay.
I used to live by there. Lovely place. Alicia lived with her mother, her brother, and her stepfather because her parents were divorced. On October 10th, in 1986, at approximately 7:30 p.m., Alicia's mom sent her to the gas station to get 2 pops for Alicia's brother and for her mom. They were sick, so she sent Alicia to go get some Sprites. The gas station that Alicia went to was only 2 blocks from her house. It was a 1-minute walk. As she was walking to the gas station, she heard a strange noise, and she saw someone darting between houses. And I mapped this out on Google Maps. There's only like 6 houses she has to walk by. That's how short of a walk it is. She decided to cross to the other side of the road, which was actually the side the gas station was on. She got to the gas station, she bought the 2 Sprites, and she started heading back home. When she crossed the street, which was less than 5 houses away from her home, a man with a mask ran from the other side of the street, from between 2 houses. He crossed the road to the side she was on, and he pointed a gun at her. He asked her if she had any money, and she said, "No, you can check. I don't have any." He grabbed her by the back of her head, he pulled her hair, and he marched her into an alleyway, warning her that if she were to scream, he was going to kill her. As they're walking through the alleyway, they came upon a garage, and he told her to open the door. Then he pushed her inside of it. The garage was almost like a big shed, a 1-car garage. It was dirty, and it was filled with junk. He then stripped her naked, forced her underwear into her mouth. He tied her up using her own clothes as binds, along with a wire from a lamp in the garage. He then placed her jeans completely over her head so she couldn't see anything. While she was on the garage floor, in order to prevent her from moving around, he placed 2 heavy bags on her back. Then he left her there, alone, for about 5 minutes. When he returned, he was driving a creeper van.
Oh, I should have known.
Should have known. Creeper van, because he's a creeper. He picked up Alicia and he threw her in the back of the van. This man drove around for quite a while. During the drive, he kept asking Alicia if she knew where they were and if she knew where they were going. Alicia kind of figured that they were still somewhere in Terra Haute, but she played dumb and acted like she had no clue where they were at. A few minutes later, the van pulled into a driveway, and Alicia was carried into one of the houses owned by her kidnapper, Mr. Bill Benefiel. You ever heard of Bill Benefiel?
No, I haven't.
Bill Benefiel was a 30-year-old loser married to a woman named Marilyn. He owned 4 run-down houses, all within the same block in Terre Haute. His wife lived in one of them. He lived in another one of them, and the other 2 were empty. Now, why he doesn't live with his wife, I don't know, but they don't live together. Now, the house that he took Alicia to was number 323. And unbeknownst to Alicia, and Alicia was correct, they were still in Terre Haute. Not only were they in Terre Haute, they were less than 100 yards from Alicia's home.
No.
Yes.
They were basically in the same neighborhood.
Yes,
still.
It was 1 block away. Alicia was brought into house number 323, which was one of Bill's vacant houses, and she was placed on a mattress on the floor. Throughout all of this, Alicia never screamed or put up a fight because she was told if she did, Bill would kill her. While she was naked and bound laying on the mattress, he started making small talk with her. He asked her what her name was, where she lived. He eventually untied her and began taking sexually explicit photos of her while her head was still covered by her blue jeans. Of course, it did not take very long before he raped her while holding a gun to her head. When he was done raping her, he put the mattress on a bed frame. He made her lay face down on the bed. He then placed a chain around her neck and chained it to the bedpost. He also handcuffed her to the side railings of the bed. He tied her feet together with rope, and he left her there. He came back about 15 minutes later. When he came back, he informed her that he had gone back to the garage, which is where he originally held her after the initial attack, to pick up her clothing and the sprites she dropped. So there was no evidence remaining at the scene, and no one would know what happened to her. He untied her. He put duct tape over her eyes.
Her eyes?
And placed a large wad of toilet paper in her mouth. Then he put duct tape over her mouth, and he left her that way all night long. The next day, he forced her to perform oral sex. Following this, he handcuffed her arms to the bed railing, and he handcuffed her ankles together like he'd done the day before, and he left her there. The day after that, when Alicia thought she was alone, she tried to escape by scooting the bed frame toward the doorway. She also managed to chew the tape off of her mouth, and she began screaming. When she started screaming, Bill rushed into the room. He was still at home. He threw a blanket over her head and began slapping her. He started yelling at her and told her not to scream or he was going to kill her. To punish her, he took out a knife and he made lots of small cuts all over her back.
Ooh. Ooh.
It gets worse.
Oh, of course it does.
He cut off her fingernails.
Cut off her fingernails?
Yes.
What do you mean?
I don't know how else to describe it. All I know is in the court records it says he cut off her fingernails.
What the fuck does that mean?
It means he removed her fingernails. And he cut off chunks of her hair. While he was cutting off her hair, he told her he was going to save a few pieces to put in his scrapbook, which was a collection of other bits of women's hair that he had kidnapped and harmed and tortured and whatever he did with them.
He's got a scrapbook of hair.
That's what he said. Once again, Bill warned her. If she tries to escape, he's gonna kill her. To taunt her, he placed a gun against Alicia's head and he clicked it, but no bullet fired from it. He was very paranoid that Alicia might see his face. So to ensure that her eyes stayed closed, he did the unthinkable. He superglued her eyelids shut.
Superglued.
Superglued. I hate superglue.
I've gotten it stuck on my fingers.
I know I had to take an X-Acto knife once and cut my finger skin apart, so I'm very sensitive to superglue, which is probably why this case stood out in my head.
That's messed up.
He wasn't convinced the superglue would be enough to secure it, so the bastard put duct tape over her eyes too.
Jesus.
I told you he was paranoid.
Ugh.
He then stuffed toilet paper in her mouth.
Why toilet paper, dude?
I don't know. In these days, toilet paper is a precious commodity.
That's true, it is.
And then he duct taped her mouth shut. It wasn't until October 12th, a couple days after Alicia was kidnapped, that Bill finally fed her some food. He fed her a sandwich. Then he raped her 2 more times that day. His rapes were often very long and very painful. It wasn't until day 3 of her captivity that Alicia actually managed to fall asleep for the first time. She managed to somehow fall asleep with superglued eyes, chained to a bed, gagged. As time passed, the only way Alicia could tell the changing of the days was by listening to the radio. Because Alicia was kept in a room in the attic that had no windows. He'd built basically a small cell for her in the attic. So the only way she could tell days were going by was through listening to the radio. She was raped at least once a day, every day, and every day Bill told her he was going to kill her that day. On October 30th, and this is about 3 weeks after she was first kidnapped, Bill was really excited. He told Alicia that they were going to have a Halloween party that night. When nighttime arrived, Bill brought a knife into the bedroom. He cut parts of Alicia's neck. He made cuts to her chest. And this is going to get graphic. He then stuck a gun in her vagina. While the gun was inside her, he anally raped her.
Oh my God. I am horrified right now. He is one sick fuck.
One sick fuck. And you know what? I'm going to say the F word.
Me too.
During the first 2 months of her ordeal, Alicia's eyes were continuously superglued shut and covered with a tape. But on occasion, Bill would tell Alicia he wanted to see her eyes. So he would put a mask on his face, and then he would pry Alicia's eyes open before supergluing them shut after a few minutes. Alicia was not allowed to go to the bathroom when she needed to go, so she would have to defecate and urinate on the bed. For the first few months, and notice I'm saying months, she was only fed 1 potato a day. She was not allowed to bathe on her own. He would bathe her on occasion, but he only bathed her about 2 or 3 times.
Are you kidding me?
In a few months span. She was beaten frequently, and as I stated, raped daily. Alicia was not only sexually tortured, but mentally tortured too. Obviously, I've already given you examples. One time, Bill placed some bullets in her hand, and he told her that one of the bullets had her name on it, and he was going to use it to kill her. He would often ask her if she wanted to die slowly or quickly. She told him quickly, obviously, and he would always respond by telling her that he was going to ensure that her death would be long and painful. Alicia spent the time she wasn't being accosted planning her escape. However, after a while, she realized it was futile. She could hear dogs barking in the house, and he warned her that they were brutal dogs, so she was very fearful of the dogs. As the days waned on, Alicia became a hopelessly broken girl.
Can you blame her?
No.
Not after months.
The psychological damage that occurs to abused people over time, a lot of people don't understand.
I can understand just giving up.
2 months after her kidnapping, on December 9th, in 1986, Alicia began bleeding profusely from her vagina. Shockingly, Bill decided he would take her to the hospital.
No.
He did.
He did?
He took her. He removed the superglue and tape from her eyes. He actually allowed Alicia to see his face. I think he began trusting that she wouldn't leave, that she was completely submissive to him. So Alicia actually got to see his face. And it's ugly, for the record. He's a disgusting, ugly human being. He unchained her from the bed. He showed her the gun and directed her to walk into the creeper van. He actually made her drive to the hospital, despite the fact she barely knew how to drive because she's only 17 and she could barely see. Her eyes were so messed up. He made sure that the hospital they went to was really, really far away so no one would recognize Alicia. I don't know exactly where the hospital was. I just know that it was far. When they got to the hospital, Bill showed her the gun again and warned her, if you say anything to anyone, I will kill the hospital personnel and I'll kill you. He instructed Alicia to tell the hospital that her name was Mary Benefiel and she was 18 years old, not 17, and that she was his wife. In the emergency room, Alicia was given a pelvic exam. Throughout the exam, Bill remained only a few feet away from her. At one point, a doctor asked her what was wrong with her eyes. But before Alicia could even respond, Bill blurted out that they were red and swollen because she'd been crying so much from the pain. The doctor gave Alicia a pregnancy test.
No.
And it was positive.
Was she miscarrying?
I don't know exactly what was going on, but the doctor instructed her and Bill to suspend any sexual activity for a minimum of 3 weeks to prevent her from miscarrying. Alicia was so terrified that Bill was going to kill the workers at the hospital that she left without telling a single soul her ordeal. She's just traumatized.
Oh, poor Alicia.
Bill made her drive the van back to house number 323. And it's actually on 13.5 Mile in Terra Haute. For those that want to do Google Map, you can go to our website. I actually did Google Map it. And I mapped the route to the Speedway. That's the gas station she was at. And her house. So you can actually see how close they were all together. Alicia had to know that she was right by her home.
That's what I was just thinking.
There's no doubt, because her home was 100 yards away. When they got inside house number 323, Bill didn't bother retaping or regluing Alicia's eyes, but he did chain her back up. Being the sexual monster that he is, the very next day, he raped her again, despite the doctor's recommendations.
Well, I can't imagine that this pregnancy is something that he wants.
That's a good point. He's a weirdo. You don't know how they think.
That's true.
He might have some sick fantasy of some perfect family with Alicia. A few weeks later, Alicia was unchained from the bed. Bill then tied her up, and he carried her out to the creeper van again, where he drove around for quite a while. He brought her to a different house that seemed far away from house number 323 and Alicia's home. But unbeknownst to Alicia, she was actually only moved across the street to house number 322, which Bill owned. There in that house, he had another windowless cell built in the attic, and she was once again chained to the bed and repeatedly raped. This house was actually Bill's house.
He took her to his house.
To his house. While she was chained to the bed, Alicia could hear police scanners. Bill liked to listen to the police talk on the scanners, and he understood what the various police codes meant. His purpose for listening to the scanners was to find out what residents were vulnerable to burglarize. For example, if an ambulance was taking a person to the hospital, Bill would know the house would likely be empty and therefore a perfect target for him.
What a douche.
Genius idea.
It is. It's pretty smart, but...
If you're a criminal.
Yes.
As time went by, Bill began to allow Alicia more and more freedom. She got some free time to be unchained. Not to do whatever activity she wanted, but to clean his house.
Oh, lucky her.
Do laundry. And basically, she was a sex slave and a servant. Because Alicia was moving around the house that Bill actually lived in, from time to time, Bill's wife, Marilyn, who lived just down the road, would see Alicia. Bill convinced Marilyn that Alicia was there of her own free will.
What? Oh, she loves to be here. What?
And Alicia kept her mouth shut when Marilyn was around. On January 26th, in 1987, after 3.5 months of captivity, on one of the occasions where Alicia was unbound, she heard strange noises coming from the basement. And she knows someone is down there. But before I tell you who, I'm going to do a shameless plug. And that's the reason we call them shameless plugs.
That's right.
Is because I have no shame. Hey everyone, if you go to our website, tntcrimes.com, you can find full unreleased episodes available for individual purchase. You can also join our membership where you get unlimited access to all of our unreleased episodes and early releases, mini episodes, and so many other awesome things. So go to tntcrimes.com. And thanks again for all your support. Alicia's intuitions were correct. Bill had another captive in his basement.
No.
Not long after Alicia's realization, Bill told her that he indeed did kidnap another person the night before and was holding her hostage in the basement. The next evening, Alicia saw the other victim, and she recognized her immediately from the neighborhood. Her name was Dolores, and she was 19 years old. Bill kidnapped Dolores almost in the exact same spot, in the exact same way that he kidnapped Alicia. When Alicia saw Dolores in the house, she was in a different bedroom, laying naked on a waterbed. Her hands were cuffed, and tape had been placed over her eyes. Bill shoved paper towels in her mouth because he ran out of toilet paper.
Apparently.
And then taped her mouth shut with duct tape. Later, Bill gave details to Alicia about the kidnapping, almost bragging about the horrible things he'd done to Dolores the night before. On February 4th, a week after Dolores had been first kidnapped, Alicia was ordered to come into the room where Dolores was. When she got there, she saw Dolores was once again laying on the mattress with her hands cuffed behind her back and her ankles cuffed together. At that point, Bill started beating Dolores all over her body with his fists. Then he took out an electrical cord and started whipping her with it, all the while forcing Alicia to watch the attack. When he was done, Dolores was covered with welts on her arms and legs. Her face was completely swollen and black and blue. The next day, just to terrorize Dolores, Bill cut off all of her hair and a finger.
Oh, what?
He asked Dolores the same question he asked Alicia. Did she want to die quickly, or did she want to die slowly? Of course, Dolores responded that she wanted a quick death. I mean, that's just so awful to know that you're going to die at the hands of someone.
It's horrible, horrible torture. Psychologically.
Of course, Bill responded that he was going to ensure she died slowly and that it would be very painful. On February 7th, Bill left the house for approximately 2 hours, and when he returned, he had mud from his waist down, and the palm of his hands had blisters on them. He volunteered to Alicia that he'd been digging a grave which was big enough for both her and Dolores's dead bodies. Alicia became convinced that she was going to die that day. However, Bill had other plans. Later on, he had Alicia go into Dolores's room. He then forced her to watch as he put super glue in Dolores's nostrils and pinched them together.
No!
I know, it's very, 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 very awful. He then put toilet paper in her mouth and taped it shut. Suffocating, Dolores started squirming around the bed, and Alicia was brought back to her room and chained back up to the bed. After that, the house went silent. But Bill didn't kill Dolores. He must have removed the duct tape and the toilet paper at some point from her mouth, because she was eventually dragged outside and put in the creeper man. Bill then drove Dolores to a wooded area not far away, and he tied one arm to one tree and another arm to another tree. Then he tied each leg to different trees. And keep in mind, her nose is still super glued. And in front of her, he dug more of a grave. He then took duct tape and he wrapped it completely around her head, covering her mouth, and he kept wrapping it until she quit squirming. Then, to make sure that she was actually dead, he took her neck and, quote, popped it.
Did he just leave her there?
No, he buried her. Ugh. Approximately 2 hours later, he came back to house number 322 and told Alicia that Dolores was dead. He had to kill her because she just knew too much. Dolores had been held captive for a total of 12 days, tortured and sexually abused. On the morning of February 11th, 1987, 4 days after Dolores's murder, Bill started freaking out, yelling throughout the house that the police were coming. He'd heard from the police scanners that they were actually on their way to his house. He started drilling holes in the floor. He was trying to pry parts of the floor up so he could put Alicia in the floor. While doing it, he instructed Alicia to gather any and all evidence of her existence in the house, including newspaper clippings he had of her missing. When he couldn't get the floor up, he pushed Alicia into a hidden crawl space of the suspended ceiling and warned her to not make a sound. Then she heard a knock on the door. That's me. It was the police, and they had a search warrant. They were specifically looking for Alicia and Dolores. A few minutes later, Bill knew the jig was up, and he told the police that they could find Alicia in the crawl space in the ceiling. An officer opened the door to the crawl space and helped Alicia get out of it. Alicia, who was so beaten down by the abuse and still fearful of Bill, who was standing by the police, told the cops that she was there on her own free will. Obviously, they knew she wasn't. She was clearly in distress, so she was immediately taken to the hospital. Once away from Bill, she told the police everything that had happened to her and what she knew of Dolores. During her 4 months of captivity, Alicia had counted being raped a minimum of 64 times. She stopped counting because she was getting confused. She couldn't keep up on how many days it had been and how many rapes she'd had. She just lost track. A search warrant was executed for Bill's creeper van, and there they found a mask, a post hole digger, a rake, a shovel, a pocket knife, 22 caliber rifle shells, and rope. But they still didn't know where Dolores' body was. They executed a search warrant for house number 323. There, they found evidence in the trash that included duct tape, which had hairs similar to the hair from Dolores' eyebrows, eyelashes, and the hair on her head. They found other strands of Dolores' hair mixed in the trash, along with Bill's pubic hair.
Oh.
Nasty. On February 22nd, in 87, a group of volunteers searched the woods for Dolores. Eventually, they discovered a freshly disturbed spot, and they started digging. There they found the naked remains of 19-year-old Dolores. An autopsy on her revealed that immediately prior to her death, she'd been brutally raped, most likely with some sort of object. It caused internal and external injuries to her rectum and her vagina. The pathologist stated that Dolores' cause of death was asphyxia by superglue. She had died exactly as Bill had told Alicia. So how did Bill get caught? You must be asking.
I am wondering why they showed up.
Almost 3 weeks before they arrested Bill.
Did his wife tell on him?
Tanya, I am not going to reveal stuff to you before I reveal it to the listeners.
Okay.
You know how many times I've had to edit questions like that out of these podcasts?
Just tell me, Talia.
Talia, tell me right now, does this person live? You must listen like everyone else. You don't get any special privileges.
Fine.
Matter of fact, I'm not going to tell you. I'm going to whisper it to the microphone. This is what happened. On January 16th, again, this is about 3 weeks before his arrest, the police were informed by a confidential informant. This is a quote from the Supreme Court case record, who was known to be reliable and credible in the past. Don't know
what that means.
What that means exactly. Told the police that Alicia was with Bill, that Bill had access to 4 different houses on the 300 block of 13.5 Street. The informant also said that he'd been seen driving a creeper van up to the rear of the homes and picking up and dropping off Alicia. I don't know anything more about the picking up and dropping off of Alicia, but that's what the police were told. Later on, the informant provided additional information. This person stated that Bill now had 2 girls being held against their will. To support the informant's claims, the police received 2 anonymous phone calls from the same person stating the same information. So you want to know who the informant and the anonymous caller are?
Well, of course I do.
The informant was Bill's sister-in-law, Janine, and the anonymous caller was his wife.
Wow.
His wife, Marilyn, had told her sister she had suspicions that Alicia was there against her will. And when Dolores went missing, Marilyn didn't see Dolores, but...
She's from the same neighborhood, right?
She didn't see Dolores, though, but she had suspicions something wasn't right. I mean, his wife did find it odd that Alicia was staying with her husband. As the police actually went to execute their search warrant, Bill's wife came up to the police car and started talking to the police officer. The police officer recognized Marilyn's voice as that of the anonymous caller who had called twice. And Marilyn admitted, yeah, I'm the anonymous caller. I thought to myself, why did it take 3 weeks to arrest him? But when you think about it, all they really had
was just someone saying it.
Saying it. And if judges signed search warrants anytime a tipster called and said, hey, Tanya's got a body at her house, we would never have any privacy. When the police began investigating Bill, they found out that Dolores and Alicia, surprise, surprise, weren't his only victims. Bill was tried for the murder of Dolores, and at the trial, a witness known only as Diana testified to a horrific experience that she went through as a result of Bill. At approximately 4 a.m. on November 23rd in 1978, about 8 years before Alicia's kidnapping.
Which meant he was in his early 20s.
Yes.
Oh.
He was 22
yes.
at this time. She was asleep in her home when she was awakened by a noise. As she went to turn on her light, a man wearing a black ski mask was standing in her bedroom pointing a gun at her. Worst nightmare?
That had to be terrifying.
Terrifying. For some reason, he removed his mask, so I don't even get the point of why he was originally wearing it. He asked her for all of her money, told her not to scream, because if she screamed, he would kill her. He then ordered her into another bedroom where he tied her to the bed with an electrical cord. He raped her, and he forced her to perform oral sex on him. He beat her. When he was done beating her, he forced her downstairs, where he covered her head with a sweater. He tied the sweater to her head with a belt and forced her to walk out the back door of her house. Completely freaked out, Diana started to scream, and Bill ran away. Following the incident, she called the police, but the police didn't have any leads on it. It wasn't until his arrest for the murder of Dolores and the kidnapping of Alicia that Diana recognized his photo in the paper and was able to identify him as her rapist and the man that tried to kidnap her.
Could you imagine seeing that?
The shock.
Seeing his picture in the newspaper, I would have freaked out.
Another victim came forward after Bill's arrest, and she described what happened to her. She was identified only as Mary. This woman testified at his trial. This was very brave of her, I thought. She said that on August 16th, 1980, 6 years before Alicia's kidnapping, she was walking across a parking lot when a man wearing a nylon mask and carrying a gun ran from behind a building and grabbed her. He forced her into some shed. I guess there was a shed around. I don't know any more than that. And he immediately started ripping off her clothing. He then performed oral sex on her and raped her while holding a gun to her head. When he was done, he tied her naked body up with her own clothes. Then Bill threw Mary into the trunk of his car, where he kept her for a day and a half.
Oh, that must have been awful.
Later, he removed her from the trunk, and he raped her again. And this is how you know it was definitely Bill. He then put putty in her eyes and placed duct tape over the putty to secure it there.
Putty like you would use on a wall?
Yes.
That dries, right?
Yes, he's got some serious issues.
This is just bizarre.
He forced her to perform oral sex on him. Then he raped her anally. After the anal rape, he vaginally raped her again, and he beat her. The putty started sliding off of her eyes, maybe because it dried. It started coming off of her eyes, even though it was duct tape. I think because there's tape and there's putty, it wasn't secured maybe when it started drying, because it all started sliding down her face. So she was able to see Bill for a brief moment. Then eventually, he just removed his mask. Again, another way we can tell it's Bill is he shaved all of her hair off her head.
I really don't understand that.
He then beat Mary. He told her that he's raped at least 20 or 30 women, and some of them have ended up in the river. When Bill was done with Mary, he dumped her naked and bound body in a field. Mary was able to free herself and run for help, but once again, Bill didn't get caught. He was able to continue to kidnap, rape, and murder for many more years. As I stated, there was a trial. At the trial, Alicia, God bless her, testified against him. She said everything she went through, and the judge allowed her to testify to Dolores's victimization. Bill was found guilty of first-degree murder and the kidnapping and rape of Alicia. During the sentencing phase, Bill had an expert testify that he suffered from schizotypal personality disorder. Do you know what that is?
No, I was just going to say, what's that?
I'm glad you asked.
I've never heard of it.
People with schizotypal personality disorder are often described as odd or eccentric, which is probably why his wife didn't live with him. They usually have few, if any, close relationships. They generally don't understand how relationships form or the impact of their behavior has on others. They also misinterpret others' behaviors and motivations and have a strong distrust for other people. As the person with schizotypal personality disorder tends to hold peculiar beliefs and may have difficulty responding appropriately to social cues. They're weirdos.
Very much so.
Just teasing anybody that has it. I'm sure you're perfectly fine. You're a weirdo. That was supposed to be a mitigating factor. And another mitigating factor to Bill's sentencing, because he was trying to avoid the death penalty.
What, you get mitigating factor for being a nut job?
Well, yes. Depends on the level of a nut job. I mean, if you have schizophrenia.
Well, that's true.
But this isn't. Just so everybody is clear, this is a personality disorder. This is not schizophrenia. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it's not mental illness.
He also brought up the fact that he was adopted, as if that was somehow a mitigating factor. Ridiculous. I mean, I'm adopted.
Well, you're a psycho, so I'm just kidding.
Thank you. I'm going to edit that out. According to Bill, his mother sold him as an infant to a woman who ran a brothel in exchange for a place to live. He claims to have been physically and sexually abused by one of his mother's boyfriends. But there are plenty of people that have been sexually abused that do not go on to superglue people.
And rape them
nonstop.
Them.
The jury sentenced Bill to death by lethal injection. I don't want to get all political, but his death sentence got the people from the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union, all in an uproar. If you Google the name Bill Benefield, you will see the majority of the information is in regards to the death sentence he received. The ACLU got on some big kick, saying that Indiana was violating the international human rights standards by putting Bill to death. He should not be put to death because he has mental illness and because of his childhood upbringing.
That sounds like bullshit to me.
Complete bullshit. You know how many people had it way worse? Do you know what most of the people in prison have gone through? Most human beings suffer trauma in their life. Get over your inner child. I kicked my inner child's ass a long time ago.
I had to kick my inner child's ass.
In the end, Bill was scheduled to die on April 21st in 2005. He spent that day watching TV. His last meal consisted of pizza, a sub sandwich, and he had some pop. When it was time for him to be executed, Dolores' mother went to the prison. She wasn't allowed to watch him, but she wanted to be there. And this is a quote from Marge, Dolores' mother. "He was there for her last breath, and I want to be there for his. I want to be as close as I can and know for sure this monster is gone and he will never, ever again hurt anyone else. Ever again." The executioner asked Bill if he had any last words to say before he died. And he said, quote, "Let's get this over with. Let's do it."
That's lovely.
Because he's an asshole.
'Cause he's a huge asshole. What year was that?
This was 2005. He's dead.
Oh, good.
That's the end of this really sad story.
I'm sad for everyone. Alicia, I hope she's not, like, living some horrible life somewhere. I hope she's living her best life.
I know. I hope she won the lottery
Me
and
too.
fell in love with an amazing man.
Well,
Now that I've
thanks,
depressed
Talia.
your day, the dark side of human nature is fascinating.
It really is.
And it's real. Everybody needs to be careful and be safe. And go to our website.
Especially if you're in quarantine right now. You got nothing else to do.
Should be our slogan. You got nothing else to do.
Go online and download some episodes that you haven't listened to and spend that 99 cents.
Check us out or become a member. We have been working on our membership and adding stuff to it. We have lots of bonus material and bonus episodes. Your support helps us continue to do what we're doing. Also, they can go see us on social media.
Absolutely. Facebook.
TNT Crimes.
Instagram.
Twitter, but I don't recommend it yet. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for listening to us.
And, no, there's no and. That's it.
Follow us if you like us. Become a follower. You can get all of our episodes as soon as they're released.
We have some shout-outs, don't we, Talia, before we go?
We do. I will have the honors if you don't mind.
Go right ahead.
Shout out to Amber G.
Hey, Amber.
Paula C.
Hey, Paula.
Katie N.
Hey, Katie.
Lauren M.
Hey, Lauren.
Thank you guys so much for supporting us.
Thank you.
Wow.
I had to thank each one of them.
You did a great job. Thank you guys all for listening and following us.
Until next week, America.
Ooh, I like that. Have a good one.
Have a good one. Bye.
Bye.